Esteemed audience, thank you for tuning into yet another amazing episode of the Great Debaters Contest. We continue this search in Mombasa County. I am your host, Esperanza Kapanga.
And I am Chris Boru. The bone of contention between our intellectual teams today is Africa cannot do without the West.
In the proposition, we have Barani Secondary School.
And in the opposition, we have St. Teresa Girls High School. Proposal number 1, you have 3 minutes to make your submissions.
Africa. Africa is the world's second largest continent. We all know that. Now, I'm here to talk about the motion which says Africa cannot do without the West. To take you through a memo considering this, we know that as of late, the Eastern countries like China and Japan that are from the Eastern have contributed to foreign aid. But when we come here to compare the aid that has been given by the Western and that of the Eastern, we all agree with me that the East gives foreign aid. The East gives foreign aid for selfish demands, maybe. Like, this is maybe very true. Let's talk, for example, let's say that China. We have seen that these Chinese loans are being given out to Africa. But let's us take in consideration what benefit. Because we all know that these Chinese are giving out loans, but at a high interest. So I strongly propose to this motion which says Africa cannot do without the West. Now, why am I saying that Africa cannot do without the West? Let's say security. We know that on the date of maybe 4th October 2013, there was an Al-Shabaab attack in Kenya. But what happened? We all know that the ones who came in aid to us was that from the West countries. That was the US and the Israel military personnel which came to help us. Another thing that we like you to know is that the government that is in Africa cannot do without the West, because we have seen that Africa benefits from the government that is given out from the Western countries. Africans used this kind of non-educated teachers to teach, but as a result of the US and Israel and other Western culture and education sectors have influenced us. And we think that if West will cooperate with Africa, we are going to make it and achieve in future. Thank you.
Mr. Koza, you have 3 minutes to make your submissions.
Let's raise our ambitions higher. Success on free trade shows that we are capable of achieving more together. It is not the time to sit down and relax. Quoted from Paul Michael, the president of Rwanda. I'm Susan Chikana from St. Teresa's Girls Secondary School, opposing the motion that reads Africa cannot do without the West. Africa is the second largest world continent. Cannot do without means that we cannot live without the West. That means that we cannot do without them. We cannot stand on our own without the West. And the West are countries like Europe, Australia, and America. My first point is quoted from the Masterminds Journal. European had a trade plan with Africans. During the year 2017, the Europeans, that is the Germany, decided to turn their spotlight on trade with African countries. They did this viewing the Africans as their partners. That means that they also cannot do without us. Their partners, they viewed us as their partners in their continent. And so-called, they formed the Marshall Plan that will only contribute to Africans, that will not only contribute to the Africans' development, but also form trade partnerships between the two parties. Let them not black mine us. They acquire raw materials for their industries back home. They get coffee from Africa. They get gold from Africa. They get tea, textile. Through horticulture taking place in Africa, they acquire flowers. Cocoa in Ghana all goes to benefit the West. Without Africa, France will slide down into the rank of a third world power. Brain draining on African inventors. Best and popular African investors have come to take our best investors. That is, keeping in mind the SDG goal number 9 on industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Savin Kezeu, a Cameroon inventor of software. He is a Cameroon engineer, yes, an inventor in the software. He is software engineering. He invested a computerized anti-collision system which is compatible with most mobile equipment such as planes, trains, cars, and the gates. This means this investor is really helping the Westerns. This means that if this person, the Savin Kezeu, couldn't be existing, he's coming from Africa, they could not do without all this investing. My second point is a Kenyan. My second fact on this is a Kenyan a Kenyan in the electronic field, Maurice Metza, also developed the SMS-based vehicle anti-theft system. Julius Malema said that leaders of the economic freedom fighters, we only need ourselves. The African leaders must begin having conversations of a united Africa.
Second proposer, you have 3 minutes for cross-examination.
It is so ironical that you're using an object made of technology obtained from the West to say that the technology is not benefiting us. You are here saying that the West cannot do without us. The motion says that Africa cannot do without the West. But you're talking about France demolishing because us not providing coffee and tea, which is so ironical. You're also saying that we as Africans are supplying things to the West. Yes, we are doing so, but there are so few. Compared to what they're giving us, compared to the support that they're giving to us, it is so different. Their support to us is so big compared to what we are giving them. I am supporting this motion simply because one man said, if you want to go far, walk. If you want to go far without getting tired, walk with someone or walk with others. Therefore, we should embrace the West help. How can we embrace the West help? We embrace their help by showing them that, yes, they have helped us. Not saying we cannot do without them. Not saying we cannot do without them. The reason as to why I'm supporting this motion is that the West help has helped us improve our sectors. Let's have a look at the health sector. We've all seen Cuban doctors coming to our country, helping us curb the issue of health problems. Who hasn't seen that? It was all over the television and the media. Some of them are even speaking our local languages now, in order to help us, in order to help the local mwananchi that is suffering from diseases. We've also seen some of our some of our citizens getting treatment from the West countries. An example is Ken Okoth, who died recently. When he was in France, although he was sick and hospitalized, he was well, he was living. But what happened when he arrived in Nairobi? He died. That shows that in Kenya we don't have the facilities to curb diseases that are deadly. The West have also helped us improve the food sector, or rather the agricultural sector. Just recently, we saw our government receiving food aid from Mexico. Who didn't see that? We received maize from Mexico. That helped us curb hunger in different parts of Kenya. For example, in Turkana, people are dying because of hunger. They've also helped us increase the state of industrial set. We are tapping West countries' experts to help our industries. A good example is the CEO of Kenya Airport Authorities, Mr. Johnny Adamson from Norway. That is an Western country. Another example is Sebastian Mikaus from Poland, CEO of Kenya Airways. That is West people who are coming to boost our industry in Kenya. So let us join us. Let us say that the West people are not helping us. Let us say that we cannot do without them. Let us say we can't do without them. No, we can't do without them.
And the closer, you have 3 minutes for cross-examination.
An independent mind is more productive than a fidgeting mind that depends on foreign neighbors to aid it. Caroline Ondoro, St. Teresa's Girls, here to rebuttal my fellow opponent. You talked about China being an eastern country aiding Kenya. My friend, you're out of the motion. We are talking about Africa depending on Western countries. You also talked about Western governance in Africa. It's very ironical because it's the other way around. Africans are the one governing the Western countries. A good example is from our own motherland, Honorable Barack Obama, who once stood as a US president. On to my first point. It is not necessary for Africa to depend on Western countries so that they can be able to build themselves in all aspects. We can do other things such as getting fundamental rights that will come up with macroeconomic stabilities. Sources according to Egypt Independent states that transformation in agricultural sector in Egypt, given by the evidence from the Minister of Agriculture, Aidin Ezda, quotes that 5.2 million tons of agricultural products are being exported to the Western countries. Secondly, this year, industrial trade has risen up to 52%, resulting to Africa manufacturing various products. Market size have increased to 1.2 billion, having 3.4 trillion of gross domestic products. And you still tell me we should depend on Western aid. Surely, let's be reasonable. Third point, we have unleashing power of urbanization. Sources from Wikipedia quotes that from 1900 to 1950, we've had 14.7% of African going urban and sustaining itself. Let's not even go far. Recently, we had the capability of hosting the first World Cup, which was in 2010 in South Africa, and we hosted Western countries. And we still say we should depend on them? No, it's not a choice. Let's go to things that happen around in our societies. A good example is the SportPesa Kenya, which began under 3 Kenyan investors. I mean, the names are Ronald Kairuri, Paul Wanderi, Washera Maina, who invested over 10 million worth to English Premier League footballers. Hull City was also sponsored, and currently they are sponsoring Everton in another $1 billion deal. According to CNN News, it states that Nigeria has recently signed an African continental deal which supports trade in Africa. Why should we dwell on Western aids? Yet we have the resources, the facts, everything that we have within our own expense to rely on ourselves. As I conclude, the climate of Africa is one amazing thing that most Westerners depend on. A good example is the Diani Beach, being granted one of the best beaches in the whole world, whereby it supports Western people when they come to this site for prehistoric visitation.
The proposers have been asked, with regards to the example concerning Cuban doctors coming into the country because of the failure of our health system, why don't we just train our own manpower rather than depend on the West? The opposers have been asked to give an example of an African country that is actually managing well without help from the West. Proposer number 3, you have 3 minutes to respond.
Thank you. I'm Rosemary Michael from the Barani, and I would like to answer your question. To me, I will tell you that even the knowledge that's required to train our own people, it is from the Western people. Thank you. I'm here to propose this motion that says African cannot do without the West. You have seen that African cannot do without the West because we have a lot of sectors which are entirely depending on the African countries. I entirely depend on the Western countries, like the health sector. We have heard that there are Cuban doctors who come to our countries, who come to our African countries so that they can treat the African people who are sick. That it means that we don't have enough facilities to treat our own people in African countries. And moreover, we have seen that in sports, we also borrow experts from the Western countries, Western countries, so that we also borrow experts to train our teams from the Western countries. I would like to ask you a question. Why, as African countries, we do not depend on ourselves, but we depend on the Western countries? Why don't we depend on ourselves and trust ourselves so that we can employ our own coaches who would coach the teams which they participate in sports? Let me give an example. Like the Harambee Stars, they are trained by Sebastian Migne, who is from France, who trains them, the Harambee Stars. And we also, if you go to the industry, we are tapping West countries experts to help us improve our industry. Moreover, the West countries recently, like Mexico, give us African countries like Kenya maize so that we can curb hunger.
Third opposer, you have 3 minutes to respond to your question.
All growth depends upon activity. There is no development, physically or intellectually, without effort, and effort means work. I'm here to answer the question: which country that has managed without the aid from the West? I believe you know Ethiopia. Ethiopia is an independent country. It depends in itself with all aspects, economically, socially, and politically. And to my first point. According to the Ministry of Trade and Cooperation, US is the second biggest buyer of Kenyan products, like coffee, oats, and titanium and tea. Now, tell me, are we the ones depending on them, or are they the ones depending on us? I believe that when developed countries help Africa, they expect something back from us, and that is our mineral resources. According to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics data, American consumers bought 26.9 billion worth of Kenyan goods, while Netherlands consumers bought 25.3 billion worth of Kenyan goods. Are they not the ones depending on us? Let's not go too far. In our own country, during the reign of Mwai Kibaki, 95% of our resources were internally generated, but only 5% was borrowed, meaning that even if we didn't get the 5%, we could still manage by ourselves. I believe that as Africans, we ought to know that we can do without the West. All we have to do is that our leaders should come together. Instead of spending years writing useless donors reports and thousands of evaluation meetings, they will actually come together, join hands, make sure that trade takes place between African countries. And I believe that one will bring development in our continent, and that is Africa. AIDS does not work. It has never worked, and I believe in that. If it didn't work in Singapore or Korea, why will Africa be different? And I believe that as Africans, we can still stand by ourselves without any aid from any country. Our leaders should start discussing ideas with others and make sure that they develop our country. And the real big question that us as Africans, we should be asking ourselves is whether the West can survive without us. Thank you.
Proposers, you have 1 minute to make a final submission.
You should not fix your mind with propaganda. You should not say that the West cannot survive without us. That is indeed irony. We've talked about all the sectors that have benefited from the West help. We've talked about health, we've talked about industries and also sports. We've also mentioned about food aid. We get aid from the West countries. That is realistic. We have also mentioned something concerning sports, that we borrow their expertise to come and train our teams in Kenya. We don't trust even our African people to trust our own teams. This is because we entirely depend on the West countries. We entirely depend on what they know. We entirely depend on their knowledge to train our people. That is why we have John Anderson training the Arab Stars. We have the Clarence Sadaf training Cameroon. That is realistic. We've all seen these things happening in Kenya. If we really say that we can do without the West, why are we even employing them to come and do work in our country? Thank you.
Opposers, you have 1 minute to make a final submission.
I believe that us as Kenyans, we don't nurture people to be burdens to others, but we nurture people to be self-dependent. African cannot do without the West. I don't believe in that fact. I believe that Africans can do without the West. Africans has all the mineral resources. We can still exploit our own minerals so that we can build our economy. If the Western can depend on us, taking our minerals, taking our raw materials, taking them to their country so that they can develop their industries. So we also as Africans, we can use our own raw materials to develop our countries. I believe we can do that without their aid. Thank you.
Barani, Abeid, who is actually the first speaker. You started on a low note, and though you brought out your points well, but the lack of confidence now brings the whole team down. Rubin, I want to believe you could have done better in the cross-examination. Africa cannot do without the West. Really, you had a wide choice of examples that you would have picked. Rosemary came out a bit more powerful in the team. You made you gave good answer to the question. You could have probably advanced your points better if you could have brought out the fact that the people who actually introduced the formal education were from the West. However, you gave a very good answer to the question. On the opposing side, we have St. Teresa's. You've done quite well to bring out the points. Good confidence exuded by the first speaker. However, you did not say much. You took more time explaining the motion rather than giving us the content. So you did not deal much on the content. Speaker number 2, good mastery of the content. You made a good attempt to give examples of instances where actually the West have depended more on Africa than vice versa. And the examples were quite good. We have Lucy, the last speaker, again, very good answer to the question. A good example of cases where we have the issue of over-reliance, having not helped the countries. The example of Singapore was quite good. that despite the issue of over-reliance actually is not the issue that can help Africa. Africa needs to stand on its own since most of the raw material actually is gotten from Africa.
Barani Secondary School. The judges awarded you 63%. Let's give them a round of applause. St. Teresa's Girls High School. The judges awarded you 66%. Let's give them a round of applause. Congratulations to St. Teresa Girls High School for being the greater debater in this debate.
That's it for today's conversation. Keep it going across all our social media platforms with the hashtag GDC for SDGs. Thank you for staying with us. I have been your host, Esperanza Kapanga.
And I am Chris Boru. See you in the next episode.